Ralph.
Yeah, it sounds really good. Okay, so Ralph Havens here, physical therapist in Bellingham, Washington, Beyond Limits Physical Therapy. And my good friend, teacher, mentor, longtime colleague, Tom Gimateo, PT, chiropractor, naturopath, acupuncturist, physical therapist. He studied a lot of stuff. And over again, I get clients asking me, how did they figure this out? Because we're doing this myofascial mapping and we're finding that where the primary root cause is for people's conditions, running injuries, chronic injuries, health conditions of all sorts. And many times the root cause is far removed from the where you're having the pain. Like I had a calf spasm and it ended up being a problem around my heart and aorta. That was my first introduction to IMT. And after 8 months of not being able to run, 5 minutes of running, I couldn't run more than 5 minutes. The therapist worked on my Julie Shishino from Los Angeles, did these techniques that looked very like not much of anything to my heart and my aorta. And 2 days later, I went for a run and I was back to running. And it led me down this process of taking up to 116 classes since February of 2000. But over and over again, even the clients that come in regularly, they ask me, but how did they figure this out? Because so Tom, I just want to like open this up. Like, I want to tell a little bit about the idea of this. Like basically, say my heart and my aorta. And if we're working on an aorta, just to think like you can work on an aorta and that can be a primary cause of a calf spasm. But then when you look at the techniques, I'm going through the list of some of the techniques. There's these strain counter strain positions that you're putting people in very strange positions and holding it for a minute or two. There's blueprints where you just seem to be touching different spots. What are called type 1s, you seem to be just touching different spots. Compression syndromes, you seem to be pushing on a couple little places like T12 in the spine and the costochondral cartilages of the rib cage and releasing compression around an aorta that goes through a diaphragm. And then there's the thing of like, there's things called disruptions of membrane, which are like holes, arteries, and you're fixing up holes and bone bruises. You guys found bone bruises before the doctors found them with MRIs. So I just want to say, like, how did you guys figure this out? Like, what happened? And thank you for being here.
Hi, Ralph. How are you today?
I'm good.
It's been an interesting journey we've been on for the last 35 years, right?
Yes.
We both have the show for that.
Yes.
Excuse me for 1 second. I'm just going to remove the office from
Okay.
this session.
Okay. So yeah. So and just to tell you about it, like one of the things that I found that helped people get this was that the results. So Tom and I always test and retest before and after. He always says, stand them, bend them, walk them, which means like test your range of motion, test how you walk, test how you feel. I originally have people check how their feet feel and how tall they feel. And they finish sessions and they feel taller. They are taller. And their feet are touching the ground differently. And their ribs are moving differently. And they feel looser and happier and lighter. So if we didn't test before and after, would we know if anything changed? Because the techniques are very interesting, to say the least.
Yes. So, my wife, Sharon 𝒔𝒂𝒉𝒆𝒓'𝒔, who passed away 10 years ago in 2015, started this journey with her own children. Okay. And it was a mother's passion to make sure her children succeeded and survived and became normal again. And so there were 3 children, and her middle child, daughter, was born a month early with a collapsed lung and spent that time in an oxygen chamber for the month. And at the end of that, she was still alive, but her diagnosis at 5 years old was mildly retarded and legally blind because the oxygen and other therapies she needed to. And one of the processes was her lymph system also got burned out. And Sharon trained as a European physical therapist, and the specialty of back in the 50s and 60s and 70s was to help children with, that's my wife and I in 2014. And those are all the books we sort of rewrote. There's about probably 300,000 pages of notes that we took in, and a couple of things that made us different is we never invented anything new. We just were gathering information, and the team exploded to, at its biggest part, about 350 doctors and therapists with all these different specialties that learned a special language. And that special language was to put that in integrative manual therapy. So we were never happy with the regular discussions of certain types of formats. So when somebody was giving a massage and the muscle got quiet and soft, we never stopped and said, okay, muscle spasm went away, but how did it go away? Was it because we gave it an artery? Did the lymph system open up? Did the nervous system? And with our tools as neurodevelopmental physical therapists, we have the answers to how the brain works in many pathways. So as we started to educate other health people to talk the same language that we did, and that was one of the things that was interesting with myself, was it's almost like the Tower of Babel in the Bible, where everybody's speaking a different language and nobody's communicating together. So one of the best highlights of integrated manual therapy is we're inclusive. We're not saying we know the best, but let's speak the same language, right? If you go to even the different languages, we say the color white. Italians say blanco. So if you don't know Italian, when somebody says that's blanco, you think they're speaking rubbish, or they don't know things. So that was a big communication piece. And as I moved from being a licensed physical therapist and studying the chiropractic field, I learned that there's nothing that was, both fields are parallel to each other and they complement each other. But the way the words were discussed and the way that the medical society put the physical therapists on one side and the chiropractors on the other side, they created the war between them. So that was part of we were all speaking a different language. And even today, it's hard to get that language together. So you started being a student of ours, and we started to say, well, what's the answer behind that? Oh, it just got better. No, that's not an answer for us. So we actually went in and we studied. So we're the best anatomists in the world. We study every piece of the bones and go back to the science. Somebody gave their whole life to a certain bone. We go in and read every page of it and not just think it's a bone, right? And we just put a Band-Aid on it. So that's something that makes integrated manual therapy a specialty, that it is embedded in true scientific research, and it brings it out and doesn't throw things out that should have been something common in the past.
So you studied a bunch of different methods, and then you could say what you were feeling in the body, depending on whether someone's a massage therapist or a chiropractor or a PT. Yeah. And you could say, okay, this feels like we just changed something in an artery, or this feels like we changed something deep in a bone, and here's what we think we changed, that kind of thing.
Right. And then some of our senior students would go out and say, I want to study more about acupuncture. And then they would bring it back in the same language as we did, right? And acupuncture is about 3,000 years old. Ayurvedic medicine from India is about 4,000 years old. And science can't prove those things, right? We haven't, the human mental processes of today's science haven't been able to wrap around why does an acupuncture needle do such good, or why does that plant do so much good. Everybody thinks.
I want to ask you though, like you guys, you said you didn't create anything new, but I have a client that has tried a lot of stuff. I mean, a lot of stuff. Yeah. IMT is what really turned it around for him. A lot of things. He says I keep him in the game, and he says, and I concur, I've never seen these techniques of anything that looks even remotely like, well, sort of like laying on of hands. I guess you could say laying on of hands, but some of the things you guys have found, like the difference between certain positions that you do and handholds and all sorts of things, and then you've been able to label it and say like, well, we probably have 100 plus or more techniques.
About 150 different types of ways to touch the body.
Yeah, and it's like, so for one structure, say the aorta, there's all these possibilities, and then with the diagnosis, you can come up with what to do, but the actual technique looks so interesting.
Yeah, so I can go through the case study that we had today, Ralph.
Okay.
I have a 12-year-old boy who's been in my care for the last 3 years. And over the summertime, the family, they don't use this as much. And we got them over the learning disabilities about 1.5 years ago. And we started to have them spread out in time. And mom calls me up and go at the beginning of the week and says, I don't want him to hear this, but I'm worried about he's not listening. He's spacing out. He doesn't follow directions anymore. He used to be a really nice kid, and so I had him taken to the medical, and he's now sensory deficits in listening and hearing. Right? I said, well, bring him in. It's been like 9 months since I've seen him, and she was asking, I'm worried about this. How do we change this? And we looked at the child and said, oh, this is in IMT, this is very simple because he's growing and some of his body parts don't grow as fast as the other. So he's getting taller, but his circulation didn't catch up. So he's getting half the blood to his head. So we need to encourage the circulation to open up. So we worked for 1.5 hours, and I said, here's how the vasculature is the tight, and look at his posture. So all we have to do is get that vascular to start to stretch out just as tall as he was. And mom was so surprised because he'd look dazed and confused when you asked him a question, but at the end of the session, he was right there and sharp. And when we stood him up, stood taller. So that is science, and that is body awareness that isn't taught in traditional Western medicine anymore.
Yeah, I'd like to unpack it a bit. Somebody can show up with a forward head and tight through here. And they think of well, a rolfer would want to do stretching to the connective tissue, and a chiropractor might want to pop certain things, and a physical therapist might want to stretch and strengthen things. But you found something deep in there that was about the arteries that improved blood flow, and then that opened him up, and he had a shift.
Right. It's knowing the right golf club to use at the golf course.
Yeah. And then the actual techniques, tell us just a little bit about how all these different positions and techniques, say for the aorta, the big blood vessel of the body, there's all these positions to unlock tension in the muscles, and all these pressure point things, compression systems to release compression around it. And then there's this and then we got infection and rupture of the membrane and bone bruising. How did you find those techniques?
Well, some were in acupuncture, some were in osteopathic medicine, some were just even physical therapy pieces.
Really? Wow.
Each of those tools were okay, I can help somebody with the lymphatic drainage, right? And so going back to Sharon and her daughter needing, because she was a very puffy kid, and traditional lymphatic drainage is a very soft technique of helping move the channels along, right?
Yeah.
And so we have techniques now that can change lymph fluid dynamics by not having to push the fluid, but opening the gates that keep the fluids pressed back, right? But we needed to understand how to work with adaptive spasms in the autonomic nervous system to be able to appreciate that. So we
and then did you just
layers.
figure out how to press to release it, or how did the techniques look like pushing here and here and taking putting something on slack, and
Right.
how'd you
And
figure
notice, well, we use a osteopathic technique called strain counter strain.
Yeah.
And bringing a tissue into its relaxed position and saying, okay, this is normal and should be relaxed. And the body sees it as super stress, and it can reset that mechanism. And that was by Lawrence Jones in the 50s. He was able
Let me
to
grab that book. While you talk, I'll grab the book.
right. So Dr. Lawrence Jones actually was able to write up 300 different muscles in the body and say that bicep may be in spasm because its wiring is off. So what we need to do with the bicep is bring it into its shortened position, which means taking the elbow and the wrist and squeezing it up so the biceps can get smaller and waiting 90 seconds to rebuild that piece, right? And that's the classic Jones original publication in orange that you have there.
Yeah, it was my first physical therapy book. Well, maybe not the first, but I got it back when I was a student at Texas, in Fort Worth, Texas, College of Osteopathic Medicine, strain counter strain, Lawrence Jones. And so that was muscles and joints and stuff. And then I want to show page 92, because it's one that I show clients from time to time to give it the premise of IMT, because it's a perfect example when Sharon talked about the aorta, one of the many aorta techniques. And and the description in there is really awesome about the rule of the artery and how the body will protect that and loosen it to improve shoulder motion. And but the position is quite unique. And how did Sharon go from being Lawrence Jones strain counter strain for muscles and joints and finding a position that would release the aorta? How did that happen?
Well, I think the combination of when we got married in 1996, when we had two different minds looking at it from two different ways, really made the whole system explode.
Wow.
So the aorta technique that you just showed is one of my first writings.
It's an amazing technique. It's like the most incredible thing. You do that to somebody and they just pop up. And
so in the red book, she would say all the weird positions are Tom's in here. So, and I went from a truly anatomist point of view of, well, how does the aorta grow from being, a baby that's only 6 inches tall and watching the generations? So that whole position is to take that candy cane shape and bring it into a scrunched position.
That's what the position is. It's and it's like, look at this one. It's like, I'm like, you got to be kidding me. There's a position to release the circle of Willis in the brain. That's like for like the little arteries that go around in the very center of the brain.
Right. And so, Ralph, we've had many clinical successes, even with stroke patients. If we look at, there's a common stroke when somebody has a CVA, which is a cerebral vascular accident, the normal nerves, they had a stroke. And sometimes you see the patient and they're bunched up and their hands so always tight. And what we learned in traditional physical therapy, which they're still teaching today, is we got to get that. We don't want this arm to be here and frozen. So we're going to try to really contract it.
Yeah.
And then writing the book on arterial spasm, instead of seeing this as a problem, we're seeing this as the body trying to solve something. So if we took the red book and actually applied relaxing the heart, relaxing the aorta, relaxing the carotid arteries, the internal carotid arteries, and the MCA, middle cerebral artery, which is the most common place to have a stroke, we fix all those up, the arm tone just drops away.
Yeah.
So one of the rules that people really get upset when I say it is muscles are stupid. If we did a technique that's supposed to make a muscle spasm disappear and the muscle comes back into spasm, then the muscle is being told by something higher that we need to be in that spasm.
Like my calf spasm that was protecting my aorta. And I'll just flash it up here. There's a technique for that middle cerebral artery. And it's just, but it is incredible that you guys still found those positions.
Yeah, and I mean, after taking over 100 courses, you start to see the way we see, right?
Yeah,
so it's asking questions, and that's a problem. Why? And it's like, what's that signal trying to tell me?
Yeah.
Right. So we take that even with the immune system. It's not that people caught COVID. My statement is, why did your immune system get so weak it allowed COVID to be able to attack you? Or
and that's the idea, like we're not like saying we heal or fix somebody or cure somebody of that. We help the body get healthier because the body then is the thing that heals it. So
And the science of Western medicine is, oh my God, we have an autoimmune disease. So we really need to shut down the immune system.
Yeah.
IMT's approach is, well, what is hindering our immune system? Well, radiation and pesticides really make our immune system shut down. So if we eliminate the bad foods that have that in there and we bring blood supply back to those organs, they can flourish. And instead of having our immune system attack us, we get the immune system to recognize us.
Yeah.
There's no disease. Or when people are saying, well, I have a rash and I'm just going to take this medication to take care of it, the question is, well, what are you trying to get out of your skin? And let's
Yeah.
fix you so that that poison's not trying to come out. And when we're using Western medicine, we're saying we don't want to see that, so we're going to shove it back in and cause more disease.
Yeah, we've had podcasts about that with you about like when somebody shows up with acne and they have constipation and lots of allergies and stuff, their body's
So,
release.
but yeah, on the outside it looks like magic, but on the inside, as you know, that after you learn the technique, there's science behind each one of those to say, well, so an example that most of us have experienced and we just think is normal is if we're going to get our blood taken, and the next 3 days my arm is sore, and sometimes I get my blood taken for to look at all the different components of it, and I don't feel it the next day, and the next time I get it, it's really sore for a while. So what happened between those two scenarios? Yeah, if you really want to look at the science, we're actually taking a syringe, right, to draw the blood, which actually is a straw with a razor blade at the end of it. And we want that needle to go through the skin. So it's cutting a hole through here, it's cutting a hole through the muscle. And then when it hits the vein, it's cutting a hole in here. And then that pipe is sucking up blood supply. So the optimal is when I pull this back out, there's enough rubber sensation in the vein that this squeezes tight and we don't have a leak. But if this doesn't happen, then we get a thing called a hematoma or a black and blue mark. So if I cut my vein and pull it out and there's no elasticity because we're eating poor food, we're going to get more and more hematomas. So instead of that bleeding and making a big pocket, maybe our bicep will try to squeeze it and try to pinch it together. So we're almost putting a tourniquet on it on the inside out. So if you're having an elbow that's sore for 3 days after you got your blood drawn and you see black and blue in there, the body is saying, oh my God, I'm bleeding to death inside my body. So why don't we use our bicep and make it go into spasm, right?
Yeah.
And even the techniques we have for the muscle spasm, we don't close that leakage, the bicep is going to go back into spasm again. So we have one for the bicep to relax it, but if it's doing its job, that I have a leak and I do something to the bicep and it comes back, I'm going to look deeper. So maybe that protective mechanism is deeper and deeper and deeper into that whole process. So this 12-year-old, so this 12-year-old boy was, tight in his arteries. He couldn't stand up tall, but he has to see. So he's sort of like in between, not getting enough oxygen up there, so his processing isn't good. And mom saw immediately his eyes were bright. He's working towards it and saying, every time he hits a growth spurt, you may want to come in because his body may need some stretching. And, the doctors used to call that growing pains, right?
Yeah.
Or they'll grow out of that thing. It's just a symptom for now. So we always ask the question, where's the symptom? And why isn't that getting better? And I'm always looking for, if I don't have the answer, what other system we need to do that. So that thought process gave us to look at all these different other processes. So tools like Reiki or deep tissue massage, and all have therapeutic benefits, and people have people have been cured by certain types of techniques. And other people, they get a little better, and some people don't get better at all. So if 2% of the population gets better through one system, maybe we need to open up to adding more systems to it. So that's
maybe we're not quite in the right spot.
That's where the integration of manual therapy is asking those questions, because the founders of osteopathic medicine and chiropractic medicine, one helped somebody that was deaf and couldn't hear and the other one had stomach problems, and they did a crack of the back, and those fixed. So even chiropractic and osteopathic medicine weren't there to help a neck pain. They were actually there to treat the body. And we've lost that. The mechanism of science and medicine that we've made because of commercialism is feel this, don't feel this, let's cut it out and make it a disease process instead of, okay, what's the body trying to tell us? So
Yeah.
we are actually the true clinicians asking the question, where does it come from? And if you don't know what you don't know, it's really insane.
Yeah, like if
So
you don't know that there's a possibility that an artery, for example, and there's so many things that it could be
Yeah.
different than an artery, but if you don't know that, then and all you know is muscles and joints and ligaments and stretching and strengthening, you're going to find that, but it might be the protective stuff.
Yeah.
This is
And
this is
even,
Tom's spot, 860-561-2286 to talk to Tom. And there's the address West Hartford, and it's at imtwellnesscenter.com. So yeah, and really contact us. That would be a good thing to do. So yeah, and it is just incredible. I know my client's going to want to watch this, and because he's been asking, and a few of them have been asking, like, but how did they find it? Because it's still quite amazing. It's very amazing to me that each of these classes is like 3, 4, 5 day classes, and with hundreds, maybe 1,000 techniques or more in each book, and each position and technique and thing is so interesting. Like just
yeah, and that's not just Tom and Sharon doing it. It's Tom and Sharon teaching this language, and Ralph, your specialty in long distance running. So we learned more about how does the foot dynamics work with this piece, and then you contribute back. This is a team of 500 practitioners understanding the style and bringing it back and looking at the refinement of that whole process, right?
yeah, I mean, I think I'm going to use a compartment syndromes from the foot ankle class today on the next guy that's coming in. At least that's what I think. And once I check him out today, but yeah, man, oh man, it's it's still truly amazing. And
You
I know
could probably
my client is going to be like, but how did they figure out to do this thing to do?
you could probably use ambulation 2.8.
2.8. Okay, I'll put that down. That's the new IMT. So it's still
Right,
being
so our
developed.
ambulation course took all those 30 years and put it into one book. And on one page, you have about 40 hours of different techniques to look at.
Yeah, yeah. And that's the thing. I remember once I was in St. Helena, California, taking an integrative diagnostic class with probably 60 people from you and Sharon. And I don't know why Sharon singled me out, but she says, when Ralph gets to where we are now, we won't be here. We'll be farther down the road. And it's continuing on.
Yeah, and it's just like the statement, well, I can't, you used to be able not to program your videotape machine. And now, we don't even use videotape machines anymore, right? And if
Yeah,
you,
now it's streaming.
right? And you have some young kids, and if you can't figure out your iPhone, you're just going to ask them how to fix it.
And
Ask
who's 100% accurate in finding bone bruises? And I never taught him,
Yeah.
is Baden. He's 8 years old.
Yeah.
He's like, here's one, Papa. He just
Yeah.
kind of goes like this and says, there's one right here.
So we have to get the old school out and the new
Yeah.
school, right? So, and the new generations are taking this in stride. And
Yeah, they
the
already have
hardest person to teach is somebody that's been in the old dogma of medicine.
Yeah, yeah. It's so there it is. And the key I found is to test things. Like you say, stand them, bend them, walk them. Like if we can test enough stuff, we can see what's different. And that's the key. And then whatever you're getting done to you, like you've got to come in with a set of problems. We do some stuff for you to solve it, hopefully. And then you test them, stand them, bend them, walk them, and you're better, or you're worse, or you're the same. And with that kind of data over the years, we find, yeah, you got these kind of problems. We do this stuff, and we can expect this. So that's the idea. Like basically, we test a lot of stuff and see did it work. And I'll show you my place. This is my spot. So So I'm on the West Coast, Bellingham, Washington. There's our numbers, and ralphhavens.com. Got a great blog, I think, for running. And then Tom's on the East Coast, West Hartford, Connecticut. And we both do Zoom sessions to check in with you. So reach out if you've got a chronic condition, a running injury or some sort of injury of some sort, chronic pain, chronic health condition. Tom was talking about even learning disabilities. Reach out to us and we can let you know what we see. Because over the years of doing this, Tom's taught me, and we can see with our eyes as well. It's nice to put our hands on, and the techniques are hands-on, but there's a lot of ways to help you. So Tom, thank you so much. I actually see my guy showing up, so I'm going to tell him the podcast is live, and he can go ask part 2 and say, okay, and here's the next questions. So
Okay, thanks,
thank you
Ralph.
so much, Tom. Really, really good to see you. Always good. Bye, you guys.
Have a great day.
Yes, have a great day.